Several of you have asked me to talk about Caitlin Schumacher, not sure how you say it. It sounds familiar, the name. I think I've been to her blog maybe before, because I think she does a lot of recipes. I think I've made one or two of her recipes before, but I'm not exactly sure. But the name sounds super familiar, but her face didn't look familiar to me, so I'm assuming whatever, doesn't matter. Point is, you wanted me to talk about this recent video. It's a what I ate today, but specifically you wanted me to talk about the part where she mentions feeding her two dogs a vegan diet. She feeds them a combination of wild earth with this kind of mix of homemade food. It's chickpeas, rice, sweet potato, carrots, broccoli, peas, hemp hearts, yeast specifically made for dogs, she says, and flax oil. So obviously, well, maybe not obviously, but I think you guys wanted me to talk about this because I've talked about feeding dogs and cats vegan in the past. I've said for cats, it's pretty tricky, probably don't do it. And I did not feed my cat Sniff. RIP, it's been almost 3 years. It'll be 3 years in October. That's crazy. But I did not feed him a vegan diet. I fed him some dry kibble that was vegan along with just the Friskies canned food. And then in his last, I think, few months or so, he was just eating the Friskies and just anything. I was trying to get anything to get him to eat because he was just not. It turned out his kidneys were failing. He was 21 years old. But for dogs, because they don't have the same issues, particularly the kind of propensity for UTIs, for urinary tract infections, like cats, particularly male cats can have, it's been seen as safer for dogs to eat plant-based diets, and vegetarian formulations for dogs have been on the market for a long time, even from kind of bigger brands than, just the little small, like vegan brands, even brands that produce regular meat-based dog food or dog food with meat have had vegetarian formulations, and also Wild Earth specifically I have talked about before as well. I think I have a whole video on them, so I'll talk about them more in a little bit. But yeah, so I assume that's why you guys wanted me to talk about it. Honestly, the homemade portion of what she's feeding them is a little bit concerning to me, obviously as a non-expert. I'm not a veterinarian or anyone who formulates dog food or anything like that, but it's obviously a lot safer to feed dogs or cats like commercial brands that have been formulated to meet AAFCO guidelines. But again, she is feeding Wild Earth, which has been formulated to meet those guidelines. Hopefully she's feeding them the amount that they're supposed to be getting for their weight, but then I guess they're getting extra food too. So you definitely don't want to feed, less of the formulated food and then replace that with some sort of homemade thing. But also she does say that their vet checkups have been good, have been normal. Vet checkups, I think is what I meant to say. I know that's what I meant to say. So yeah, it all seemed fine to me, honestly. Again, lots of dogs have been on plant-based diets for years, either because their owner doesn't want to feed them meat, like me with my dog Bean Dip, who, oh my God, it's been maybe 6 or 7 years, something like that. Or it's because their dog has a bunch of allergies to various meats, which can happen. And their vet could have even prescribed a vegetarian formulation for that dog. Again, as long as the food is properly fortified, it shouldn't be a problem. And then I read the comments, and I came across some comments from a couple of vet techs voicing concerns about the link between certain plant-based ingredients and a deadly condition known as dilated cardiomyopathy, or DCM. DCM has been seen in dogs before. There are certain large breeds that are prone to it or more prone to it, but there's this practice. It's a group of cardiologists, like veterinary cardiologists for pets, right? For animals. They've got a bunch of different locations, a bunch of different cardiologists. I think it's in Maryland. And they noticed that other breeds that typically don't get this condition, were getting it. The common factor was a diet heavy in peas, lentils, chickpeas, and potatoes, carbohydrates typically intended to replace grains. Other veterinary cardiologists have also noticed the phenomenon. The first clue for us was when we saw a household with two unrelated miniature schnauzers with DCM. They were both eating the same boutique, exotic protein, grain-free diet. So yeah, this group of cardiologists, this practice, they alerted the FDA, which subsequently began an investigation into this link in July of 2018. 1 year later, FDA names 16 brands of dog food linked to canine heart disease. Out of 500 plus reports of DCM, 90% of the foods were grain-free, 93% contained peas and or lentils, and 42% contained potatoes and or sweet potatoes. So no studies have been done on this. This is just a group of reports from mostly from clinicians who have treated these dogs, these particular dogs, similar to the essential oils video that I did where I showed the various reports of people's complaints regarding consuming or even topically applying essential oils. So it's not a study, but obviously it is very concerning. Again, 90% of the foods are grain-free, 93% contain peas and or lentils. So 93% of cases were consuming a diet including peas and lentils. So it still isn't clear what the cause is, if legumes/potatoes are actually the culprit. It could have to do with taurine deficiency, that chickpeas and whatever else are interfering with taurine absorption. Many of the dogs with DCM do end up having a taurine deficiency, but not all of them. So the FDA's kind of conclusion so far, at least, is that don't worry if you're feeding your dogs these foods because we don't really have any evidence for a cause and effect relationship. But many veterinarians are saying no, because there's no reason to feed these diets in the first place. There's no reason to feed grain-free in the first place. Grain is not harmful for dogs unless the dog has a specific allergy. Obviously, if your dog is allergic to corn, don't feed them corn. But otherwise, there is no reason to feed, say, a beef and, pea food over a beef and rice food. So we're talking about grain-free dog food. What about vegan dog food? What does this have to do with vegan dog food? I mean, vegan dog food isn't typically grain-free, right? Actually, in the list of complaints, there really isn't much mention of vegetarian or vegan dog food. There's like one, but the dog was consuming a bunch of other non-vegetarian brands with it. But if legumes and or potatoes are actually the culprit, then vegan dog food is problematic, at least most of it on the market. V-Dog, is that the most popular? I don't know why I'm assuming it's the most popular vegan dog food. I don't know, but it's an all vegan brand. Their product has peas as the first ingredient. Same for Halo. They also have meat-based food, but they do have 1 or 2 vegan products, a dry and a canned. They both have peas in the ingredient list. Benevo, dry and wet, are mostly grain and soy, but they do contain peas. Evolution is mostly oat, corn, and soy, but it is not a company that I would ever trust with like the health of my animal. I talked about them in the video I did that was mostly talking about cats and vegan diets, so check that out if you're interested. Ditto for the Amy brand as well. That is another brand that I would not feel comfortable feeding my animals. And I don't even think it's like fortified with a lot of things like taurine, so yeah. PetGuard has a vegan canned food with pea protein, oats, quinoa, and peas, again, farther down the list. Pedigree actually came out with a vegetarian formula, but they seem to only sell it in India, and it has peas too. Natural Balance, which I think maybe is the other kind of big vegan dog food brand, is mostly rice, oat, and barley, but it does have whole peas and pea protein. And that's another brand that has a bunch of different, meat-based and grain-free options, but they also have this vegetarian formula that's been around for a long time. But again, it does have peas and pea protein. And finally, as far as I could tell, I think this is it, at least for now, Wild Earth. So the selling point for Wild Earth is that it contains koji. It's this fungus. It's a complete protein, and obviously a lot more sustainable than meat and whatnot. And it does show up on the list of ingredients after chickpeas, oats, pea protein, and potatoes. And holy crap, it is so expensive. Wow. Luckily, there is one brand. It's actually a very large, reputable brand that has a vegetarian option that does not have any legumes or any potatoes or anything in it. It's Purina. Purina has this hydrolyzed protein formula. It's primarily cornstarch and soy protein. And it is actually mentioned once in the list of complaints, not as a problem food, but that the food that the dog was actually switched to, this Bull Terrier pit mix, was diagnosed with DCM and heart failure while on Acana and Natural Balance, and I think another brand or two. And the dog was switched to the vegetarian formula, to the Purina formula while in the hospital, and was doing well on it. It ain't cheap, of course. I mean, it's a specialty diet, right, for dogs with allergies. So yeah, but it is out there. There's also this Royal Canine one, another big brand that is also legume-free, but the third ingredient is potato, which again may be problematic. Also not cheap, of course. Personally, if I had a dog, I would probably just feed them the whatever non-vegetarian, like Purina one, whatever the cheaper line is from Purina or whatever, and then just donate the money that I would have spent on the vegetarian version to like an effective animal charity. I mean, that could be like hundreds of dollars a year, depending on the size of the dog, right? I probably would do something like that. I think I would maybe feel better doing something like that. I don't know. I'm sure some of you have your dogs on VDog or maybe one of these other brands, hopefully not Evolution. Please, God, please not Evolution. Obviously, it's better to stick to larger brands. I think I talked about that in the vegan cat video. These smaller companies are going to be more prone to error, right? Or just not having, a veterinarian on staff, right? And I think Wild Earth does, but is that like the only one? And having products that are actually formulated by veterinarians. I think there's a name for people who actually formulate dog food, isn't there? It makes sense, right? We have doctors and dietitians. So yeah, I prefer, buying from Purina or Science Diet. Is that what it's called? Science Diet? Something like that over, a VDog or even like, Natural Balance. That's like a bigger brand, right? They're in stores and stuff. If I had a dog, I would definitely be taking them off of that food just to be safe. Again, we're only talking about a few hundred dogs. So this is not, most dogs who are eating these foods are fine, but it is a terrible condition and it is potentially deadly. To be clear, not everyone is concerned, and some have even been critical of the FDA for investigating and specifically for announcing a link to any pet food brands, for like naming pet food brands. Now, this is from a presentation given during the annual pet food conference, which unsurprisingly was focused on declining sales of grain-free pet foods. So I don't know, maybe take these statements with a grain of salt. Again, these foods haven't been linked, directly. Any vegan or vegetarian foods, they haven't really been linked. It's been the Acana and Blue Buffalo and all those sorts of like heavy meat and sweet potato meat and peas, those sorts of products. But that could just be because a lot of people are feeding their dogs Acana. A lot of people aren't necessarily feeding their dogs VDog and stuff, right? So it might just not be showing up right now when we only have like a few hundred cases, right? I've read that, maybe it's the meat, because they have these exotic meats. But if you look at the brands, the vast majority of them, the vast majority of the brands of the products that these dogs are eating, it's like beef and salmon. It's not kangaroo and shit. You can find that stuff, but most of these dogs that are coming down with this condition, coming down like they're getting a cold, developing this condition, they're not eating kangaroo. They're eating like standard meat. We need in vitro meat, I think I said that too in the other video. Like, we need in vitro meat. I think Wild Earth was going to do something for cats. I don't know. I don't know. I haven't, kept up with that brand or anything. And like going to their website now, they've got all these it's like anecdotal shit that you see a lot from the vegan dog food companies. Like, our customers say more energy. But yeah, we need lab grown meat for people and for pets, or even just like some insect based thing, some cricket dog food or some shit. That would obviously be like a huge improvement over cows and chicken and fish. If you still plan on feeding your dog VDog or whatever, if they're really doing well on that food, any sort of legume or potato heavy brand, please consult with your veterinarian. Let them know what you're doing and make sure that your dog is checked. The taurine levels are checked regularly. Again, this is an incredibly serious condition, and it is virtually impossible to check early because the symptoms don't show up until they are really, really suffering. In happier news, I did very much enjoy Caitlin's video, her part of the What I Ate Today. She seems to eat, at least going by this one video, I've only seen the one, but she seems to eat a very balanced diet. You know, it wasn't just full of fruit and rice and stuff. Like there was fat and there was protein. She had tempeh in one meal. I think she had tofu in another meal. Didn't seem to be anti, you know, like oil or anything like that. It seemed to be pretty like normal and balanced. There was like some chocolate and stuff at the end of the day, you know. That sounds kind of crazy, but like, you guys know, you know what I'm talking about. So maybe I'll do another one of those, hey, here's a good example of vegan eating for Caitlin. Or maybe, I think what I was going to do is just like a compilation of a bunch of different people. I'm not sure yet, because I think you guys sent me like a bunch. I need to go back and go through all of those. Maybe you sent me her name. Maybe that's where I remember her name from. I don't know. But yeah, so that was nice. Yeah, hope you guys enjoyed the video. Hopefully you learned something like I did. I was not expecting to learn that. I don't have a dog, again, so it's not something that I'm really keeping up on. I guess I should, considering that I've said like, hey, it's fine to feed dogs plant-based diets, you know. I'm trying to decide if I want to remove that video or not, or if I just want to put something in the comments. I'll have to go back and watch it. I kind of skimmed through it earlier and got all teary-eyed because Sniff, and I even have a part towards the end where Sniff is like playing with his little blue feather. Aw. I still have my shirts with little holes in them when he used to jump on me and his claws. So I've got like on my stomach, you know, it's not on the seam or anything, but I've just got like little holes, like 3 or 4 little holes on like several of my older super faded shirts. And I can't get rid of them. I had the funniest meow. I don't know if you guys ever really heard it. I swear, the bigger the cat, the smaller and cuter the meow. The smaller the cat, the more ridiculous and like guttural and weird sounding the meow. That has been my experience, I would say like 90% of the time. Anyway, thank you for watching. Subscribe, support the channel, patreon.com/unnaturalvegan, and I will have a new video very soon. So thinking about this more, I do have a couple of things to add. I still stand by, I guess, my position that if I had a dog, I would switch to, you know, the Purina hydrolyzed, or maybe even one of these foods that has potatoes as like the 3rd and 4th ingredients. But I would definitely be staying away from the pea-based foods, or again, just feeding like some cheap meat-based foods, animal byproduct-based foods. I talked about that in the other pet feeding video, vegan pet feeding video, and then donating to an effective animal charity that focuses on, you know, factory farming, or focuses on clean meat and promoting plant-based foods like Good Food Institute. That said, I would be remiss, I think, not to mention specifically the reason that we would feed animals vegan diets in the first place, which primarily is because we don't want to harm other animals. And obviously, when we choose to feed our dogs or our cats or our ferrets or whatever animal-based foods, we are saying that our animal is worth the lives of numerous cows, chickens, pigs, fish. And as vegans, I think we recognize that that's not right, that one dog or one cat is not worth more than countless animals. And, you know, it's not even in terms of just lives. Obviously, these animals suffer greatly before they end up in our, you know, little schnauzers pet food. And so we recognize that this is wrong, and we're very uncomfortable with this. Some of us, I mean, you still see a lot of vegans who are like, no, it's, you know, it's fine to feed animal-based foods because it's natural, and they kind of push it under the rug, which I get. I get doing that, but I think it's important that if we do choose, you know, if you're feeding the dog or whatever, or Wild Earth, and you do choose to go back to meat-based foods, it's important that you're honest with yourself, that that's what you're doing. You're saying that the life of your dog is more important than the life of cows and pigs and chickens. I'm not chastising anyone making this decision. I don't want it to come across like that. Again, I understand. I've done it myself with Sniff when he was dying of of kidney failure, I put him on even more meat. I mean, even before that, he was eating meat, but then, I was trying to get him to eat any possible thing. I was trying any kind of food and putting him on, anti-nausea medication from the vet and other medications. I can't even remember what. I was doing anything. I was saying with my actions that the life of this, 21-year-old cat is more important than the lives of numerous other animals because he's my cat. And this is why I push for more. I want more brands. I want more vegan brands. I want clean meat for pets, or even an insect-based meat, or some sort of, maybe a bivalve-based meat, or something. I want food that is less cruel. Now, and this is the other thing that I wanted to mention, it's not as if, if you're feeding them a meat-based commercial brand that you are doing the absolute best for them. It's not as if these foods don't also have potential issues. We have numerous studies showing that many of these brands, when they are tested, that they are incomplete, which is not surprising because just because on a bag of dog food it says that this has been formulated to meet AAFCO standards, it doesn't mean that the food has actually been tested. It could have been, and typically with the expensive like veterinary approved brands that you would find in a vet's office, often they have, but with your standard brand that you just buy at Kroger or whatever, often they haven't. They're just assuming that what is in the food is in the food. Just like, if you go into Chronometer and put in what you ate for the day and it spits back that, oh, you meet all your nutrient needs, that's essentially what they're doing. So it's unsurprising that these studies that are actually independently verifying what's in these foods finds that, oh, actually this, and this falls short. And in addition, we're seeing more and more diseases that dogs are getting, more and more cancer and whatnot. Part of that is because of, a lot of it is because of genetic predisposition. Like I think it's golden retrievers, 50% or something like that end up with a specific type of cancer. It's absolutely insane. A lot of this is due to just breeding and stop breeding dogs, stop breeding these purebred dogs. Like it's fucking ridiculous. It's bad for the dogs. And obviously we have tons of dogs that would love to be adopted. I don't know why I'm telling you guys this. You already know. But obviously there is an environmental factor as well, and very likely a dietary factor. We're seeing a lot of dogs who are obese, and part of that is because, it's so easy to overfeed our dogs. But also, again, just because a bag says that this is the amount of calories that's in a cup of dog food, it doesn't mean that. And it's been found with a lot of these foods that there's actually way more calories in in a gram of dog food than what it says on the bag of food. So you may think that you're feeding the appropriate amount and your dog ends up fat. And also, talking about anecdotes, because that is what we're talking about here when we're talking about DCM. We are currently just talking about anecdotes. These reports are just reports from vets and from people saying they fed their dog this and the dog ended up being diagnosed with DCM. Well, on the other side, we do hear a lot of people feeding their dogs, switching their dogs to vegetarian and vegan diets and saying, hey, my dog's coat is so much nicer. They do have more energy. They're enjoying their walks more. They're running for balls more. They're, whatever. I've been feeding my dog this diet for 10 years and they're 20 years old and they're still healthy and happy. Even though I'm not a huge fan of promoting a brand based on that, which is what a lot of these dog food companies are doing, saying our food is healthy because look at all these people who feed their dogs and the dogs are healthy. Like, I'm not cool with that. I don't think that we can dismiss those anecdotes, but take the DCM anecdotes seriously. I don't think that's being very consistent. And it's not just nutritional adequacy with these dog foods, it's also contamination. I mean, we've all heard about various recalls with various brands because of salmonella or listeria. There's also been chemical contaminants, aflatoxin, too much vitamin D3, too much methionine. There's even been a connection between dogs consuming large amounts of chicken jerky, treats or whatever, and renal syndrome and this kidney syndrome. And of course, the risk of consuming this 4D meat, which is in a lot of the commercial pet food products. This is meat that's from animals that are disabled, diseased, dying, or dead on arrival at the slaughterhouse. So this is what you would see listed as like animal byproducts on the, pet food bag or can or whatever. Due to expensive labor costs, plastic ear tags are not always removed. Old or spoiled supermarket meat, sometimes without removal of styrofoam packaging, which increases labor costs, may also be used. A variety of pharmacological active compounds may result from residues derived from farm or industrial practices, some of which are illegal. The most devastating toxicity incidents have resulted from cross-contamination of feed ingredients with medicated feeds during feed or premix processing, handling, or delivery. I guess my point is that it's interesting that so many people are so upset when a vegan decides to choose a commercial vegan brand for their dog. But most people don't really have much issue if you're buying whatever standard dog food for your dog, even though the evidence for these foods, not great. And it's not clear, maybe switching to one of these vegan foods has certain benefits, but maybe it does have a certain risk in terms of DCM. Again, we don't know for sure. And maybe staying with the meat-based foods has certain benefits, but also has certain risks in terms of, again, the risk for, salmonella or listeria, or maybe even other potential diseases. I just wanted to add that because I don't want it to come across like I think if you are continuing to feed your dog a vegan diet, I don't think you're a bad person or anything. I can understand someone weighing the pros and the cons and saying, you know what, I'm going to keep feeding this food. Again, hopefully you are still talking to a vet and hopefully you are getting them tested, even testing for taurine. Although, again, vets are saying, look, we're seeing lots of dogs with normal taurine levels and their hearts improve after we change their diet. So it seems like something else is going on. But yeah, so I understand someone making that choice. And ultimately, I do think that is the right choice to keep feeding vegan. Ideally, I think going for like the Purina hydrolyzed, but even continuing to feed, Wild Earth or VDog or, Benevo or something like that. I do think that is the right choice because obviously these meat-based foods are not ideal either. And there's just no evidence that you are like shortening the life overall of your dog if you're feeding them vegan instead of meat-based. We just don't have enough evidence for any of this stuff. And obviously lots of dogs are doing fine on these diets. So I do think that is the right choice because again, you are saving a lot of lives by doing that instead of feeding the dog meat-based or maybe adopting it out to someone else who's going to feed that dog, a bunch of cows and pigs and chickens. And that's why I don't have any pets. We thought about getting a dog for a long time since we do have kids and I want them around animals. But the reality is like we have neighbors with chickens, which I think is far more valuable anyway. If we do get a pet, it would be an herbivore, because there is a risk. You can't just assume that you can feed, especially with cats, but with dogs, even with dogs, you can't just assume that you can feed them a vegan diet. You have to be prepared to feed them animal products, I think. If we did get an animal, it would be like a rabbit or, oh my God, one of those little pygmy goats. Oh my God. But obviously many of us, have pets that we've had for years, long before we went vegan. So, I would say, again, just talk to your vet and come up with a plan that works for you and that you feel comfortable with. And oh my God, did I just talk for almost 20 minutes? Okay, hopefully I can pare this down a lot. Did I just double the length of the video? Oh my God.